Well, 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 congratulations, obviously, on the film, but actually even more, I mean, this reaction here this evening is something that is kind of building and building, isn't it, as you take the film out. And there's a point in the film where you say that the filmmaking process was not cathartic, that it's beyond that. And it's now turning into something that is even more than the film, which is just becoming a kind of people recognizing the whole truth, not just of your story, but of the wider story too.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I don't know how this works. Can you hear us? Yeah, okay. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Every time I step into the theater, it's a recognition of how many of you have been something similar or someone you love, and it's always like a lot of, I feel the emotion, and it's very universal issue, I believe.
Yeah. And you've taken it now all over the world now, the film, is that right?
Yes, so we premiered already this year at Sundance in January, and since then I've been traveling with the film. We were lucky to be part of almost over 50 different film festivals, 30 different countries, and I've been living on my suitcase. I know how to wash my clothes in shower and bathtub everywhere, so it's been my life. But we've been doing this because we don't yet have any screening plan yet in Japan. So we just really wanted to do a good exposure from outside of Japan, and so it's screening here in this amazing theater has been always my dream. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I want to come back a bit later to the sort of Japanese reaction and the chances of it getting it distributed there. But if we can just go back to the whole question of how and when you decided. And obviously we follow with you in your story, in the documentary. But it must have been so difficult to decide what kind of documentary to make from this material. So how did that process work?
Well, documenting wasn't something too hard because it was just happening in front of me. But of course, as a director, I couldn't direct, hey, the camera, take this and that, because I was in it. And so it was purely just documenting, collecting all the footage. And first 2 years, I was just recording the audio for the protection reason. But when the case wasn't going nowhere, I decided to go public because there was also possible cover-up of the story. And I just want to ask other journalists maybe to jump in. Maybe they could have helped me to ask questions to people that I couldn't even interview. But when I did the press conference, which is in our seeing of this film, many journalists came to see the press conference, but they couldn't cover it. So that time I realized that, maybe this is something I can do. Still, Japanese society wasn't ready to, I feel like, face this issue or difficult when I think that it was also something to do with power corruption. So, and it was a bit before Me Too movement happened. So, it was, I guess the timing wasn't right. But then today, I have my amazing producer, Hannah, playing for you, hear her talking in the beginning. And today, I believe we have our editor, Mariko. Are you here? First of all, Hannah and her friend Akemi, they Skyped me right after I went public. It wasn't Zoom, it was Skype back in 2017. I didn't know them, but they just said, you must be, we know how difficult it is being in Japan. And it was true, I couldn't work anymore. I was hiding in my best friend's house. And they just offer me, you can stay both of our place, just move here, and we'll think about what we can do together. I couldn't believe someone would open up their door to a stranger, and that's where it all started.
Because you do get, looking at the film, there's the real sense of you building kind of a family of filmmakers
Yes.
as you go along and supporters, and that it becomes this kind of thing that builds and builds and builds.
Yes.
Yeah. But I wondered about, just as a journalist, as well as being obviously the central presence of this film, those decisions, and we see you occasionally, worrying about, are you going to react to this more as a human being or as a journalist? I wondered whether that sort of caused you to reflect on journalism as well.
Yeah, well, first it was helping me because I couldn't face myself, or it was too hard for me to realize that's happening to me as a survivor, always facing this case as a survivor. So it helped me to distance myself, thinking I'm covering this girl's case. So it's easier to question, and I think that was somehow protection, somewhat, coping mechanism for me. But then I realized that I wrote the book right after, but I only focused writing as a journalist. I didn't put any emotion in it. I didn't feel right about it, that if I put, my emotion as a survivor. But then I think it's a typical trauma reaction. After a few years, I realized that I've been, running away from my own feeling or what's going on in myself as a survivor. And that's when I felt like I need to make a film about it. But that meant that I had to cross the line as a journalist, because it's not traditional journalistic way to cover and to talk about your own case. But in the film, it's possible. But to really understand the possibility, or to really tell myself it's okay to do it, it took time. I even thought about interviewing the offender, Yamaguchi, because I felt like I needed to be partial. Maybe he needs a space to talk about it. So some part of journalistic mindset was blocking me in a way. Yeah.
But and then you have to make decisions about how much of the legal process do you took, because obviously that would have been very, very
Yes.
complicated.
Yes.
And we probably couldn't take it all in anyway in one sitting. So again, were those decisions were made as you went along, or were they made later?
So, as I said, we collected everything, and so whole process took 8 years, and editing was 4 years. And I knew I wanted to make a film as a survivor point of view, but I didn't know, I was living it, so I didn't know where it ended. I had a crystal clear idea of telling story, but didn't know how the story ends. So, that was very tricky. And I also didn't know how much emotion is okay to tell again. So it was always constant discussion, and also as a survivor, it was hard to revisit my own trauma of 400 hours of footage. So it was almost like super hardcore exposure therapy session in a way every day. But then now I made it. Now I feel now I can tell it was therapeutic. But during making it, it was a lot. So now I can say that if you have a trauma, make a film.
But always really important that it should be a survivor story and not a victim story, because a lot of people would maybe see your story, or that if you like, would have been the way people might have looked at it at least 10 years ago anyway, very much as that. So was it a struggle to keep it as, that you would not be seen as a victim?
Well, first of all, I wanted to do this with, by myself. There were so many conversations. People told me, you shouldn't be the director. Someone else should tell your story. That's more stronger. That's more believable. But for me, I think there are so many amazing films that deal with sexual violence, but it's often told by third person. And why not? Because when the story is told by third person, it becomes someone seeing you as a victim. Not necessary, but and I just want to encourage myself and others that we can tell our own story, and it's empowering. You can take your ownership, you can rebuild your own story, and it was important to do.
Now, we're going to throw it out to the audience, so if you want to get your questions ready in a moment. But just before we do, I just wonder if we can talk about a little bit about Japan and the reception there, because we get the impression watching the film that there was support amongst younger people on the whole, that it was generational, that isn't, I mean, apart from the wonderful three ladies, I mean, just fantastic, but you get that sense that, you know, when you see the scenes in Parliament, that it's a younger representative or member of Parliament who's speaking all the time, and that the resistance is still in. Is that unfair as an analysis? I mean, on my part, that it's younger, older.
Actually, the people who supported me, most of them are in their over 50, 50s. Mm-hmm. I think it's because in Japan, we don't really have the protesting culture, because I think we failed a lot in the history. So these people who's in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they remember when they had student activism in 70s, I think. So these generation were really hardcore, like the grandmas on the street. They want to protest everything, and that was very powerful. But I think the young generation didn't have an idea that we can really do something. I mean, not everyone, but so it's as you see like when we had the meeting gathering of the support who wanted to support the case, I think it was rather older generation. And speaking about the guy, he was amazing questioning the prime minister, and yeah, he was advocating about this. But I want to put his name on special thanks. So I checked his name, and he was now on LDP party, on Abe party now. But you have to understand, like in Japan, almost always we have two parties, but it was always LDP after the war. So if you want to be the one who really have a power to change the law, you got to be on the right side. So yeah, it's complicated.
That's politics.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I spoke mostly in English because the person behind the camera was Hannah. She spent 6 months in Japan, but she didn't become a fluent Japanese speaker, so which I understand. So yeah, I had to speak in English to her. But then, like you said, I realized I also wrote my diary in English, and I did even do like a video diary in English. And I realized that born in Japan, raised as a Japanese woman, I was always told that I have to speak polite to other people, especially men, older people. And when even the guy was assaulting me, I was saying, please stop, yamete kudasai. Because that was in my head, that was in my system. I didn't know how to talk differently. And so I had to switch my mind saying, fuck off. Because that's the only way I knew. And I realized that I don't really had a language to express my anger or my emotion in Japanese as a Japanese woman. And I think that's why for me it was much easier to speak in English sometimes. And also maybe that gave me some distance as well. But it is a problem, I think. Some people told me that I'm nicer or polite when I'm speaking in Japanese. It really somehow shapes you without knowing. It's kind of scary. So now sometimes I gather my girlfriends to teach how to say fuck off.
Yeah, English is quite good for anger,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes, thank you. I didn't want to describe too much details about the legal system, so but the criminal case was dropped. That's why he was very proudly saying he didn't do anything illegal. But as we won the civil court case, he had to pay the compensation, which it was around 25 to 30,000 US dollar, which didn't even cover our lawyer's fee, but he did have to do that. But he's still active as a journalist. First of all, thank you, AHAC. Thank you so much. I have been meeting a lot of talented Japanese women outside of Japan telling the same story. And I always feel like, wow, it's their loss, right? They're losing us. But as a story, I believe storytelling can change the society, and that's why I made this film. This film is my love letter to my sister and to Japan. And whenever I talk about it, there's so many trolls, but one of the negative comment is often like, how dare you putting shame on Japan? But that's not true. It's love, coming out from love. And so I really wish they would see it, how cool it is to really take action towards to stop the violence. Of course, no one wants to be harassed or violated, and that's not the society we want. So, but the good news is, we are screening here, and also yesterday I had an opportunity to talk and be at UK's Parliament at the House of Lords, and day before I had an opportunity to talk at EU Parliament. So I feel like slowly we are reaching the impact campaign in a very positive way. So yeah, I have to believe that will change. But the legal change is so slow, as you know. The change happened. Now finally, male victim can claim the rape. Before it was only for women who can report the rape. Now men can do report. And now, yes, last year, age of consent was updated from 13 years old, I know, to 16. So that's better. But yet, definition of rape hasn't changed, which is you have to prove how much severe you've been threatened or violated. And that's making, of course, this case so difficult. So that has to change. But I think culture has to also shift at the same time. So change has to happen from many parts. And then, so I really wish we can bring back this film to be able to talk about it. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, and thank you for all of your questions. We are out of time. I'm Shiori